Hello and welcome to the Kuriaknits podcast. My name is Erin and I'm so glad you've joined me here today. It is yet another day without sun, so my apologies if this podcast is looking kind of dark. My phone keeps on flashing more light required at me, so that's fun. I am trying a different mode on my camera today. That is the cinematic mode, so that it like blurs the background, makes you concentrate on my face. I've seen other people use this. I've used it in a video before. Let me know if you like it. I find that it's just annoying when I try and hold up yarn and it's like, that's not a face, I don't want to see it. But I guess it gives a cool cinematic look. I don't know. But anyways, it has been a whirlwind of 2 weeks. Happy New Year. I got to celebrate with some of my friends, and just by chance all of them had like other commitments on the 1st or other things to go to, and so they all left at like 10:30. It just felt like a very old person party, and so me and my husband stayed up till midnight. We're like, woo. Hooray, with like our mountain of food that was half eaten. So that was fun. And yeah, I've been this week trying to get back into the swing of things. School doesn't actually start officially till next week, which I found out. I went onto campus on the 3rd thinking it was like the first week of classes, and there was no one there. And I was like, oh crap, I am so out of things. Part of like my program, I no longer have classes. I'm just kind of like doing independent research. I'm a teaching assistant this year, so I'm a little bit attached to the term in that way, but like I have no concept of what's happening for like the rest of the students. And so I showed up, I'm like, there's no one here. I guess I'll go home and work. I mean, I have access to my office and things, but it was just like when the campus is empty, and I found this during COVID as well, it's just like eerily quiet and uncomfortable in weird ways. And then you can't like get a coffee because all the coffee shops are closed, and it's just like, it's a little odd being there. It makes me a little bit uncomfortable. And so I ended up spending the rest of the week at home, which worked out well because we've been getting a lot of work done in the house. Yeah, it's really cool owning a house because you can choose when you want people to come in instead of like a note being left under your door being like, hey, a person is coming into your unit tomorrow, prepare. So we're basically moving our washer dryer up a floor to our main floor. We're going to be very British, and we're going to have our washer dryer in the kitchen, so it's just the best spot for it. Our basement is unfinished and 130 years old, which means I have left it to the spiders. We have a true, so they're down there and I'm up here, and so I am moving the washer dryer up so that they can just stay down there and not come close to my clothes, or me. Like we're just not gonna look at each other or talk to each other. We're just gonna stay apart. And so we basically need to get all our hookups moved up a floor, which, since it's an unfinished basement, hasn't been too much of an issue. But we've learned that you can't just like hire a person to do that. It's actually 3 different vendors. So we've had people coming in and out trying to arrange these hookups, and then we have a new washer dryer, like stacked unit, coming from Costco in a couple, like in 2 weeks or so. We just wanted to give ourselves enough time in case the vendors couldn't come right away, which they could, which was great. So I'm so excited for that because our current washer dryer is terrible, and this new washer dryer should have a cycle like I've seen more this in Europe, that they have a cycle for hand knits to not be agitated, and I saw like a non-agitation cycle, and I'm a little afraid to use it. I might try it with just like a hat and see how it goes, or maybe a swatch, and see if it's really non-agitating. And I'm very interested to see if I can put some of my hand knits in the washer and then just lay them out to dry, because like filling the sink with water and wool wash is a little not annoying, it's just inconvenient sometimes. Especially, I'm someone who, like, this is bad, but I let the sink fill up and then I will put it all in the dishwasher, and that's just the system that works best for me. So it's not often, I'm not like a put things in the dishwasher right away kind of person. Perhaps I should be. In the summer I more am because of bugs, but in the winter that you don't have to worry about that. So the sink is never usually completely empty, which is bad. Yeah, so yeah, I'm very interested to see how that goes. It's kind of been filling up my week, is just managing all the people. And then when the people are here, I lock myself upstairs with the dog, and the dog is very anxious. He's like, oh my gosh, there's people in my house. It's a travesty. And we're working through that. If anyone has high anxiety dog and is kind of at their wit's end, and has had something work, please let me know. Our dog has been through training. He's been on medication. We even, for New Year's Eve, we sedated him at our vet's recommendation. She said, like, these are just too high stress for him. Try sedating him. It'll make him happier. It'll make you happier. And he barked at them anyway and got very upset, even with like the full sedation recommendation. And so it just doesn't seem like anything's working. We're obviously going to be talking to his vet next week. But yeah, if you have had similar situation, please let me know, because we really don't know where else to go from here. Like, we've done all the things, and all we can really do is prevent those high stress situations from happening. But it means that it's very difficult for us to have people over, and we kind of have to lock him upstairs and let him bark it out for 10 minutes, and then he'll settle down up here. But I mean, we'd love for him to be amongst the people if possible, and we'd love for him to not have his barking fit, because, like, I don't know, it's very upsetting, and I don't want him to be so anxious. I mean, I don't want me to be so anxious either, but he's a very barky boy, and he's so sweet when other people aren't around, or when he's around people that he knows, but he just gets so, like, built up. There's a better word for that, but he gets so anxious, and I worry about him. But anyways, you are not here for all of my house, pet, and work rambles. I hope you all have had a lovely first week back, and that you were able to achieve whatever you're able to achieve. Oh, that's the other thing. So I was going to do my January reset series, and I had started filming that, and it just kind of completely fell apart. First of all, there's been no light. Like, it looks on the camera, it looks decently light, but I literally haven't seen the sun this year. And it's been very hard to film or take pictures in the house at all. And even to set this up, I have like a light over here, and to do the more dynamic shots that I wanted to with this series, I can't do it. It's too dark. And if I try to use the artificial light, I'm filming on an iPhone. It just doesn't pick up the way that I need it to, and I don't have the capacity right now to buy a nice phone or a nice camera. And the other thing is that a big part of what I wanted to do is, every year that I've had a bike, I do a Peloton every day in January challenge for myself, where I do a Peloton workout every single day in January, as it sounds. And we realized that somehow in the move, the power cord for the Peloton got lost. And so I haven't been able to get on my Peloton, which completely just discouraged me. And that, on top of, I have had really horrific menstrual pain again, that I can't get into a specialist for, which is lovely, has kind of completely taken me out. And although I've been able to get into some habits, and maybe I'll talk about that a little bit at the end of this episode, I have been also, I don't know, it wasn't turning into what I wanted it to be. And then I got so frustrated and said, kind of, screw it, I'm not doing this right now. So I'm really sorry if you're looking forward to that series. I am, however, going to be uploading weekly for the foreseeable future. I've got some videos in the bank, including a video on test knitting, which should be out next week. And then every other week will still be the podcast. And then in between, I've got a video on test knitting. I've got a video on making this space. I've got a video on how I thrift my yarn. So like all the things that you guys have been asking for. And then I hope soon I can do a Q&A as well. So that's kind of what's coming up for this channel. And let's get finally into the knits. I am wearing Neffo. This is the Port Sweater by Ozetta. It is a really excellent basic with some very simple detailing. See, this is the problem with the dark light. So there's a nice like ribbing on the arms here, and it has like a really high mock neck line and a really nice slope on the shoulder. You look up the photos on my Ravelry page, and I'll try and insert them here. you'll be able to see the slope of that shoulder a little bit better. So it's a drop shoulder construction with just some very simple details, some extended ribbing on both the arms and on the bottom of the sweater. And yeah, I think it's a really beautiful basic. I was test knitting this and it should be out, I think, next week based on when our deadline is. It got pushed back because there were some problems supplying the yarn, but I was not using the recommended yarn for this, so I had no problem with that. This was knit for me in Twin Oaks fiber and their 2-ply worsted, which is their kind of budget option. And I have this much left. This is the 6th skein. I just dipped into it. And this is in the color dark gray. Did they give me information about the wool? Just said it's Canadian and it's more of an Aran weight. It's 173 meters per 100 grams. And yeah, I thought that this worked perfectly for this pattern. I'm learning that when I'm test knitting though, I kind of want to go down a yarn size so that I don't have to go so much on the needle size. I have learned in the past couple months that I'm a really loose knitter, like a really loose knitter, and I don't know how to not be a loose knitter. So for this pattern, I did go down a needle size and it still ended up just a little bit big. I gauge swatched the whole ordeal. It's just a little bit big still, which is fine for me, but it's annoying when I'm testing and I want to give them accurate measurements. So I think that this probably ended up closer to, I knitted this size 4, it's probably closer to the size 5, which is fine. It just has a little bit more positive ease. And for the, I'll talk about the yarn a little bit more, but for the like scratchiness of the sweater, I would prefer it to be larger anyway, so it's totally fine. But yeah, I think that because it was like a worsted in the mohair is what the original was in, I think I would have been better off, instead of doing an Aran, just doing a worsted. Would have probably given me a little bit of a better chance of hitting gauge, even with going down a needle size. I probably would have had to go down a needle size regardless. Yeah, and that's just something that I'm figuring out for myself. I think the perfect combination was when I did the Pippin sweater and she had recommended a light DK and I went for a sport weight. I was able to hit gauge straight on. Did I go down a needle size? I don't even remember if I had to go down a needle size, but that was perfect for me. And I think I just need to continue doing that, which is nice because then I can buy yarn in the size down and probably get more bang for my buck. So like, I don't mind that I knit loose, and I also knit, my stitches are always tall as well. And so that doesn't bother me as much because I feel like I can almost achieve more with the yarn that I have. And I'm also petite, so it's like the length kind of goes by a lot faster than it would otherwise. But yeah, definitely something I need to keep in mind for any future test knits that I do. I just want to make sure that I'm doing right by the person that I'm test knitting for. Test knitting for Ozetta was a very like hands-off experience. She's not super involved. There's no like Google group where we're commenting back and forth, and there is an Instagram group where we can raise any problems. I didn't find any problems with this pattern. I think there were 2 or 3 things found, so it seems like they're really well edited before she sends out to test groups, and the group of people that she had testing weren't very active in the chat, which is totally fine. I'm not a very active chat member anyway, so that was fine for me. I like being in the chats for test groups. I like seeing what everyone's creating, but I'm a liker. I'm like lurking and liking and I'm like, wow, it's so good to see that. But I'm not always commenting, which is probably a problem. I probably should engage a little bit more, but I like looking, and I don't often have anything to say other than, wow, that looks great. So I just feel like it's not worth commenting. So I was talking about this yarn last time and how it might be my replacement for Cascade 220 with the price increase. And I do really love the sweater, and I find that it kind of looks like Cascade 220, perhaps a little bit more of a like a halo on it. I don't know if you'll be able to see it. Don't look at my face. Don't look at my, see, this is the problem. It's looking at my face. Oh, I don't think you can see the halo on that anyway. very, very slight halo, just because it is a rougher wool. It's Canadian wool, and Canadian wool does tend to be rougher on average, I find, than British and Norwegian wools. It's very much on the rustic side. This had a lot of like plant product in it, like hay. It looks like hay and sticks to me. It might be something else. I don't spend a lot of time on farms. And based on like steam blocking it had softened quite considerably. It definitely did, feeling like this compared to this, it definitely softened up quite a bit. But I don't think it softened up as much as I was hoping it would. Excuse me. I still have that thing from COVID where if I talk, my nose runs and it drives me up the wall. So please excuse me. Almost all, by the way, small update, almost all of my long COVID symptoms have gone away. So it's about a 6-month run for me. But the one that hasn't is that my nose effing runs every time I talk. It drives me nuts. Maybe it's not a COVID thing. Maybe I have allergies now. But yeah, so I do find that wearing this in the house, it's a little bit too warm, but I did wear this outside when I was around 2 degrees with a long sleeve underneath, and I was warm. This sweater is so warm. I think it'll be like the perfect transitional piece, and if I ever get over to England in the winter, this will be like what I wear. It was really cool to see. I was out in the rain and like the water drops were beating up on it. It clearly has a decent amount of lanolin content, and it's just like a perfect outdoor sweater, kind of acting like I expect a Lopi would. So that's really nice. I do find, again, it's a little bit warm for inside, but I'm inside now and it's fine. I just find it a little bit scratchy on the arms. Surprisingly, I'm not noticing it as much on the neck, whereas where I would expect to think it was a little bit scratchy, I find it more on the arms are a bit scratchy. And I don't know why that is. But yeah, so I don't think this is necessarily a Cascade 220 replacement, but it is a yarn that I quite like. I have a sweaters quantity in brown, this guy, and I think I'm gonna make a cardigan with it. I think I'd like this yarn more as like a cardigan or jacket, and it does feel a lot like these Canadian wools, which I thrifted that are older. So yeah, if you want to try a Canadian rustic wool, I would highly recommend this. I think it's probably the best bang for your buck. It's $12 a skein, which I think is an amazing price for Canadian wool. And it's local to me, so I think I'll keep buying it for that reason. But I think the comparison to Cascade 220 was a bit early. I'm not sure that's true, but I'm excited to see how this wears. I've worn this sweater maybe 3 times and I haven't noticed any pilling. Doesn't mean it won't pill, but I mean, that's a great sign. And I think the more it'll be like most wools, the more that I wear it, I think it'll soften up, and I think it's really great. For the construction of this sweater, I was talking about last time how the neckline was gaping a little bit for me, or it was like a little too loose. It was sitting really wide, and it's supposed to sit more as a funnel neck. And I said, oh, I'll just put elastic in it, which is what I did last time. And one of you guys commented on I think it was my 2022 roundup. It might have been this podcast, but that there's a technique where you do like a crochet chain inside the garment to bring in the neckline, and you do it with just yarn. And she sent me the video and it works amazingly. It's so cool. It's such a good technique. So you basically just do a crochet chain. Can we see that on the inside right there, right where the pickup is? And you do like you pick it up and then slip it over, and then pick it up and slip it over. I'll link the video down below. Genius. I'm so glad that you showed me this technique. Thank you. I will be using it all the time. Oh, actually, I do know the instance. So you weren't actually talking about this. You were talking about this. That's why I brought this over. So I was actually talking about the fact that this neckline is huge in my, what is this called? Snow Crocus by Midori Hirose. And I actually removed all of the elastic from this because I'm going to give this technique a try with it. And then I was looking at it once all the elastic was removed, and I don't think it's as bad as I thought it was. But basically for this one, I had elastic here to reinforce this, I had elastic here to reinforce this, and I had elastic up here. And it just like, I could feel the elastic when I was wearing it. It was too much. But the crochet chain is in yarn, and I think it would just be way more comfortable than elastic. I find that when I have elastic on the inside, I feel it on my neck, and my neck is really sensitive to the elastic. So being able to do this crochet chain, that's not the right terminology. I'll continue calling it a crochet chain, but know that it's this technique. On the inside is done with yarn, so it doesn't feel like something else, which is really cool and really nice. So I'm gonna reblock this and then see how I like it, and then I'll probably end up doing this technique again, because it has basically the same problem as this did with, I think the neck is just way too wide. But then I was looking at the samples, and it just seems like it's supposed to have a wide neck, and I didn't notice. So anyways, I'll update you on how this turns out. But this turned out really great. I think this neckline is exactly spot on. The only issue I'm kind of having with this neckline is it wants to bobble out. So because I tightened it up at the bottom here, and I tightened it a little bit at the top doing the Italian bind off, it just kind of bobbles a little bit. And I don't mind it. I mean, I think the other thing is it's a mock neck, and I don't have a lot of neck. I mean, I have neck, but like I'm short. And this is, so she'd recommend like 3 inches, and I did 2.5, and I was like, I need to stop. I'm gonna hit my chin. And it's still like really close to my chin. But yeah, I think that's all I have to say about the port sweater. I would call this definitely successful. I think I want to make it in a different yarn, and it's just like a nice basic to have in the arsenal. So I have one more finished object, and it is that I had cast this on and finished it on Christmas Eve. I was just looking for a quick knit project, and this fit the bill. This is my broken rib hat that I had made for some of my family for Christmas. I decided to make one for me as well, and I'm just really loving this pattern. If you're interested in me writing this up, I'm very happy to. It'll be interesting to grade sizes, but basically for this one I cast on 60 stitches. I did the rib, switched to broken rib, and then decreased in sets of 3. And then I put a palm on top, and I think it worked out really nice. So I'll show you like the decreases. So this is what the decreases ended up looking like. I know a lot of people really like the decreases where the decreases kind of swing around the hat. I don't like that. I like my decreases, the lines to be really straight up. It really bothers me for whatever reason when they're not. But this hat is divine. It is now my favorite hat ever. So I bought this yarn last spring at my local farmer's market, and there's a vendor there that sells Canadian Surrey alpaca, and this was a bulky weight Surrey alpaca yarn, and it is the softest thing. I just like, I've worn it inside. I slept in it. We had a really cold day and the house was cold. My ears were cold, and I put this on and slept in it. I've been wearing this to death. It hasn't pilled even the slightest. I knit it at a very tight gauge because I knew Surrey just wants to flop, and it still is like a very floppy hat, but it has enough structure to it that it's like, it's fine. So I knit this on, I think 4.5mm needles, and the recommended needle size was like a 7. So I really squished this yarn down, but the fabric it's created is so divine. So I would love to go back to that farmer's market and get this in like every single color, at least a black. I think a black hat would just be perfect. I feel like I'm losing light here. But yeah, I'm obsessed with this hat. It is so beautiful. The pattern I think also makes sure it sinks into my head just because it's in ribbing, and it kind of like but yeah, I love it, and I think I love it even more in like a black color. I think that would be perfect. It would fit all of my jackets, and I just always want this on my head. It is the softest thing. If I could afford it, these are $30 a skein, so it's a very bougie hat. If I could afford it, I would definitely have a sweater in this fabric. It is just the softest thing in the world. But you know, we can't all have what we want. That would just be maybe one day. Probably not, but maybe one day. And the other thing is that at that booth, I don't think I've ever seen yarn in a sweater's quantity. It seems very much like one-off skeins. So, but yeah, I'd love to go back and have a bit of a peruse. So let's get into whips. I don't have actually too many. I've been very focused on my knitting, which is new for me. I've only 3 whips, and then I do have some acquisitions. So let's get into that now. So the first whip I have to show you is my other test knit that I really need to get a move on, and this is the Semper sweater v-neck by the Knit Girl by Sophie, and it's looking beautiful. I think that this is going to be a firm staple in my wardrobe. I love the way that this looks. It has a double folded collar, v-neck collar on it, which creates just this like nice bulk at the top, which looks really nice on. It is in a fingering and mohair, and the fabric it's creating is actually really, really nice. And I think it's holding the mohair in better than some other times. So on my sweater number 15, I used this mohair. This is the Drops Kid Silk mohair, and the fallout of that sweater is still a problem, but I, even though this is lighter color, have not noticed as much fallout from this. So I don't know if it's a color by color basis, or if because this is a tighter gauge, it's holding on to the mohair a little bit better. So I don't know. Sorry, if I keep looking at this screen, it keeps flashing more light required, but the picture looks okay. So I'm just praying that it's going to end up okay. Anyway, so this is a raglan construction. There we go. It's a raglan construction, just a 1-stitch raglan, but I think it actually turns out looking really chic. So Sophie has already released this in a crew neck, and so this is the v-neck version. I think it's coming out at the end of this month, and we're only expected to test the body, which is a blessing, because this body, now that I'm just going in the round, it just seems to be taking a long time. And I think the other problem, or I know the other problem, is that I can only stand and knit on this for like a half hour at a time. So I'm knitting this in Drops Flora and Drops Kid Silk, as I had said. And this Kid Silk, although it's not shedding as much, it is digging into my finger in a really painful way. And I remember this happening with my sweater number 15, and it's also happening with my sweater number 23, which I'm not showing you, I haven't made any progress on, but I remember it from last year happening. And but this is because it doesn't have like another thread to sit on, at least with the Drops Air. In this I could kind of try and put the mohair on top of the Drops Air to have it sit nicer. But these two strings being so thin, I will actually get a dent in my finger, and I try to move it so that it's not digging into that dent, and because it's dented, it just kind of finds its way and sits back there, and it really starts to hurt and agitate my finger. So it's almost like I need to knit with a band-aid on or something to give it a little bit of padding, and I haven't tried that yet, and I might, because I have a lot left to go. These are only my second skeins, and based on the requirements of the pattern, I should need 6 each of these. So I still have a lot to go. It is knit on 4mm needles, surprisingly, but it is a pretty small gauge. So the rounds are quite long, and I would find that very enjoyable. I love knitting in the round, except that it hurts my finger a lot. And so I don't find myself picking this up as much as I would otherwise. And that's why I've been knitting on other things. That's why I have 2 other whips to show you, because I just can't knit on it for very long. And it's really annoying because this is the knit that I need to prioritize, but it's also the knit I want to be working on because I really am excited to have the finished object. I think it will be like a firm staple in my wardrobe. It just hurts. It hurts. And if you have any recommendations, let me know. I could try getting one of those rings that people use more in color work, and maybe that'll work well for this as well, but it's just really annoying. And this might be the end. This and then my sweater number 23, I think, are my last sweaters quantities of Drops Kid Silk. And even though it's so affordable and I would love to keep working with it, especially if I'm not having the shedding problem as much with all the colors, I just don't think I can keep doing it if it's going to hurt my finger this much. It's like the silk core in it is so thin that it's just digging in the worst way. And I've tried like moisturizing, I've tried putting like a little bit of oil there, like I tried it all, and it just is settling into my finger in a really horrific way. So I think that this is going to be goodbye to Drops Kid Silk for me, unfortunately. And I'm just going to have to invest in some mohair if I want to pair my fibers with the mohair again, because it's too much. I think I'm at my wit's end. I will finish this. I'll finish my sweater number 23 and I think we're done. I'll have to say goodbye. If you've had this experience as well, let me know, or if you have any solutions that you suggest. I am all ears. I will try anything to try and get this sweater done. I almost want like a knitting machine so I could just like crank out those rounds in the round. But anyways, a little bit. And anyways, I think most knitting machines do knit flat, but regardless. So that's how that's going. I think it's going to be an amazing finished object. I've seen people already have finished theirs or finished the body and it looks lovely. And I'm probably about halfway through, about halfway through the body. And there we go. I'm looking forward to getting that done. Look how beautiful the stitches look. Like I don't know, I don't always reach for patterns that have such a small gauge on them, but I do always end up loving the fabric that it creates. So perhaps I just need to get over myself a little bit more and really invest the time into those projects that I know that I'm gonna love. So let's do the one that you've seen already first, and then I'll go on to the new one. So this next whip I haven't shown for a little while, and it is the Oversized Seasons Cardigan by Ozetta. These buttons are not looking so good. I was just doing up the buttons to try and show you it in a little bit more of a succinct way, and it just isn't. I feel like it's a little bit better. So I have finished the full body of this cardigan, which I'm very excited for. I think it's looking amazing and it looks amazing on. I love the yarn. I love the pattern. I'm just loving everything about this pattern. I've been spending a lot more time on it, especially since I realized that I've been making this pattern harder for myself, which is so annoying. So my friend and fellow podcaster Francesca of the Italian Knitter podcast has also started an Oversized Seasons cardigan in a beautiful lavender color. I think there's a lavender. I will link her down below. She's been talking about hers. And as she was talking about hers, and I was just knitting away on something else, watching her podcast, she said, oh yeah, all of the wrong rows are knit. And I was like, no, they're not. And I ran to my pattern and all of the wrong rows are knit. And I have been knit purling them like a ribbing, because that's how I learned to do fisherman's rib. And it makes sense if you think about half fisherman's rib, you're picking up the stitch under. So the wrong side, it doesn't matter if you're knitting or you're purling it really. And genius on Ozetta's part to just be like, just knit the rows. And I have been knit purling them like a good little knitter, and I just switched. I'm like, I'm not doing it anymore. And I was a little bit concerned that it would look a little bit different. I was maybe 2 inches from separating the armholes, and you can tell a little bit where I switched, but you can't tell on the outside. So on the inside, I actually love the way that fisherman's rib looks like on the inside. Let me see if I can take up my face. Can you tell where I switched from knitting them, or knit purling them to knitting them? It's like right here. And you can tell just the slightest bit, the inside the stitches are not as poofy, I would say. Just a little bit not as poofy. But you cannot tell on the outside whatsoever. So I would call that a success. I've been making my life harder than it needs to be. And since I realized that, this sweater has flown by and I finished the whole body. So I'm knitting this in Knitting for Olive's Heavy Merino and their silk mohair. This silk mohair does not dig into my skin. So they have won the seal of approval for me. And also this combination is just so soft and so lovely. I cannot wait to have this cardigan. The one thing that the problem that I had with this is, again, with my stitches being tall. So she recommends a certain amount between each of the buttonholes, and I knew I'd have to shorten that. And so I did a different interval. I don't want to say what interval because I think it'll give away the pattern a little bit. And then that interval ended up being too tall, even though I edited it. And so I went back and did some surgery on my sweater to be able to change where the buttonholes were. And because of that, my stitches definitely look wonky on this buttonhole here. So you can see, especially like there, they've just seen better days. And I think that blocking and a little bit of like schmoozing of the stitches will take that out for me. Especially because like the button band, especially on the top, just looks so beautiful. And I just want it to look like that all throughout. So I'm just going to have to play around with the stitches, give it a really good block, and I think it'll be absolutely fine. But yeah, it's kind of annoying that I had to do all that surgery. And the reason I just didn't leave it longer, so Ozetta has both more yarn after the last buttonhole here, but also I think hers is a little bit longer than I made mine anyway. And the reason for that is I'm really concerned that I don't have enough yarn for the arms. So I will show you how much I have left. And if you've knit this cardigan, let me know whether you think that I have enough. So I had 8 skeins for this, which should have just been enough. I was a little bit playing with my numbers here, but I always end up with more yarn, and I think it might have caught up to me. So I had 8 skeins, and I have 2 and maybe 3/4 left of the heavy merino in an equal amount of mohair. My mohair and my heavy merino consumption have been bang on with each other, so I'm not concerned with like running out and having more of the other. I think they'll run out at exactly the same time. So fingers crossed I'll have enough for the arms. And ordinarily I would think that would be enough for the arms. Because we're in Fisherman's Rib, I don't have as good of a read on how much yarn I'm using up per row. I'm finding it very hard to like conceptualize whether I actually have enough for this. So, I mean, thankfully the Knitting Loft in Toronto has this yarn in this color, but obviously it'll be a different dye lot because I bought this in the Knitting for All of Ukraine sale almost a year ago. Which is really devastating that that was a year ago already. But anyways, so it's not going to be the same dye lot, and I don't know how consistent Knitting for Olive would be. I think they're pretty consistent from what I've heard from other people, but if I'm going to run out, I need to be careful about how I'm doing this, and like maybe buy 2 skeins in a mohair and then switch which skeins I'm holding with which mohair to try and give it a little bit consistency. But if I have enough, then I don't have to worry about that at all. So I think I might knit these sleeves 2 at a time, so that at least if they need to switch the color, they'll be doing it at the same place. I don't want to have to rip this out, or should I just chance it? I don't know. I might block the body to try and help that button band issue, and then give myself a little bit more time to think about this arm situation. I might just have enough. I don't know. I was looking at other people's and trying to gauge how much yarn they used for my size. And I and one other person, there's only 2 of us that have used this yarn combination, and she used 8.5 skeins of heavy merino and I have 8. So I'm kind of like, am I just gonna be under? And that's gonna be really annoying. And then if that's the case, then I'd rather shorten the body than shorten the arms. But I really like the way the body is. So I don't know. I'm a little torn. I don't want to have to rip up some of this body, but I actually did do a crocheted bind off as opposed to an Italian bind off in this one. Just in case I do need to rip it out, it'll be much easier to rip out a crocheted bind off. And because this is a darker color, I didn't mind the way that looked as much. But yeah, the whole time I was knitting this, I was watching like some Vice News segments, and I was just like, I couldn't even pay attention because I was like trying to work out some math of whether I have enough yarn for this, and I still don't have the answer. So if you have opinions, maybe I'll like make a make a poll. Do you think I'll be able to finish this cardigan? Yes or no? I really hope so, because I think this yarn combination is lovely, and I think the next time I want to splurge for like a nice $100 sweater again, I might go back to knitting for Olive, because this just reminded me how much I really, really love their fabric. And this, I think, will be the first finished object I will have from them in their wool. So I've used their silk, I've used their cotton, but I don't think I have anything finished in their wool. So that's really nice to have. And I do have a starter's quantity of their, that I'd already started a cardigan and then ripped it out, if you remember, in their merino in mohair, as opposed to their heavy merino. And I'm excited to cast that on, but yeah, I think I really like their heavy merino. So yeah, in case you needed more people singing Knitting for All His Praises, 2 big things, thumbs up for me. So I was looking for, after my finger was near bleeding from knitting on my other sweater, I was like, what is the softest yarn I have in my stash? And then I was looking at my beautiful unspun shelf and picked out my nutiden, and I cast it on, and I cast on this. This is a Heartwood sweater by Tania Barley. Let me show the front here a little bit nicer, and it is just stunning. It is a beautiful color work pattern, and it was originally, I think she had done it in Lopi, but I did it in nutiden, and I just finished the color work. I love the way that it ends here on these kind of descending lines. It's just beautiful. I was looking for a very long time for a pattern that I really loved to cast on with the nutiden. I wanted to make sure, because I have equal parts of the light and the dark, and I am not even going to attempt the names. Look at my Ravelry page if you'd like to see which colors I'm using, because they're Swedish words, and if I put any more language into my brain, I think it's gonna burst. I have been intensively learning Latin, and I can't. So look down below. But I wanted to make sure I had a pattern that used a lot of color work, but perhaps wasn't all over color work, and used very heavily the contrast color. And I think that this fit the bill. This uses equal parts of the contrast and the main color, and then all of the trimming on this is this contrast color. And I'm going to take some elements of this pattern and add them to the arms and the hem as well. And so I'm really hoping to use a good chunk of this dark brown, even though the whole body of the sweater is going to be this much lighter color. Oh, and peek the floats. They're so pretty. I'm so in love. So nutiden, it's definitely as soft as everyone says. I prepared all of my skeins by balling them up at the suggestion of other people that I've seen use nutiden, especially in color work, and I still found it quite difficult. It is an unspun yarn, and it is the most fragile unspun yarn I've ever used in my life. It would like to split at the drop of a hat. If you pull it too hard, it's splitting. If you look at it the wrong way, it is coming apart. And so I found, especially this lighter color, quite difficult to work with. I'm holding each of them double, and still, especially when you're holding color work, it just made me so much slower and more conscious of how I was holding the yarn. As you have both of your, I knit continental, so I hold both of my yarn on my left hand, and sorry, yeah, my left hand. No, yeah, I do hold it on my left hand. And I think if I could do color work like one in each hand, it might be a little bit easier for me. But I just found it was so difficult to keep the fabrics from wanting to stick together. And then when I got them to not stick together, I would like tug my finger a little bit too much, and then one of the yarns would split, and then I was trying to work it back together, and it just took forever. It drove me nuts. Thankfully, like, the yarn also, as much as it wants to split, it does want to come back together. You can almost just smoosh the yarn back together and it will be fine. And once it's in fabric, it's strong. I can pull this no problem. It's fine. But this yarn, if you are a first-time nutiden person, and especially if nutiden is your first unspun yarn that you've ever worked with, do not do a color work with it. the few rounds in here that I was able to hold one color, I had no problems. Never split, was totally fine. For whatever reason, I am rougher on my yarns when doing color work, and it is a bit of a disaster. So the designer Tania Barley actually commented on my post where I had mentioned that doing color work with nutiden was a challenge, and she said, if you do it for a little bit, you'll get used to it. And I'm like, I have not done it enough to get used to it. It was a bit of a drag. I keep throwing these balls. They're actually so fun to like squish and hold. The other thing that I've heard from other people, and I was kind of surprised to realize in my own stash, is that the dark brown and the light beige are different thicknesses. So if you, it's kind of hard to tell. The dark brown is thicker than the light beige. And so I really like the way that it turned out. I'm glad it was that the dark brown was thicker than the light beige and not the other way around, because I really wanted the dark to stick out in the color work, and having it a little bit thicker I think definitely helped with that. You can definitely tell that the dark brown is sticking up a little bit more than the light beige, but it meant that the light gray would split a lot more, and if I was doing a color work that perhaps had a third shade, perhaps was a little bit more intricate, I could see maybe causing a problem, the fact that they're not the same. And the thing with buying nutiden is that you don't necessarily know when you're buying that one of your colors will be thicker than another. And it also means that I have less yardage of this than I do of this. So I'm glad I chose this as my contrast and this is my main. I feel like I'm rambling on, but I think the world of nutiden is very interesting. I would definitely like to try more. I think that this yarn it's genuinely one of the softest yarns I've ever felt. People were not kidding about that. I found it, before I tried it, I found it very difficult to discern from people's words how, is it soft for an unspun or is it soft for a yarn? And I would say it's actually soft for a yarn, which I think is a really cool thing about this, because I have other unspun. I still am planning to do my unspun comparison video. And most of these are on the rougher side. Especially I have a cardigan in the Pluto Lopi, which is the Lopi unspun yarn, and it is rough. I was probably about comparable to this. It is on the rougher end, if not rougher than the sweater I'm wearing right now. This is not, this is soft. Do I have a comparison? It's like a step rougher than Drops Air, and if you felt Drops Air, it is the softest thing you've ever felt. So I would say this behaves kind of like a spun yarn. If you've never felt an unspun, like a blown yarn, sorry, it behaves kind of like a blown yarn, but instead it's an unspun yarn, which I think is really cool. And I think the finished product is going to be divine. And so for that reason, I'm really excited. I'm going to wait to knit this whole thing up, wear the sweater a little bit before I decide to buy another sweaters quantity. But based on what I've seen so far, I would definitely consider buying nutiden again. I do think it's worth the hype, but I think it's only worth the hype if you're willing to work with the yarn. And I would not blame you for not wanting to fiddle around with this, because I think people really downplay the fact that it can be really difficult to use. And especially for all the beautiful color work that I've seen coming out of the people who use nutiden often, it can look easy peasy, and I would say it definitely takes a little bit more time and attention, and you're not going to be banging out sweaters the same way that you would with a spun yarn, especially if you're a quick knitter. I'm a pretty quick knitter. I had to reassess and slow down, which might be kind of nice sounding, which I think it was once I got into once I like took a deep breath and was like, okay, enjoy the process, which I think was good, and it was good for me. But just keep that in mind. You will have to take a step back and really just take in that process and try and enjoy it. So that's what I have to say about nutiden in this sweater. I think it's a really lovely design. It took me a really long time to figure out that I was going to make this sweater. I really love the Badger and Bloom sweater, but it is not size inclusive in the slightest. And so I did not want to support that designer. I think her name's, I don't want to say the wrong name just in case, but Badger and Bloom is a really popular sweater. I think it's gorgeous. It is not graded well. And she even created a men's version, and the men's version isn't graded well at all. And I have heard some people have some problems with the neckline of the sweater. And I was like, for as beautiful as it is, I just don't want to support that. I've heard people emailing the designer asking for size inclusive patterns, and she just doesn't seem to think that it can be graded up to a bigger size. And excuse me, I think, if I remember correctly, Rebecca the Cray-Bea talked about it in her latest episode, that she had emailed her and she's like, it definitely can be graded to a bigger size, and I believe it. And so I just didn't want to support that. So I was looking at some other patterns and I was like, oh my gosh, like there's no other pattern that has a good like ratio of color work to not color work that's not like florals. And I just didn't want florals for these yarns. I wanted something like very like, this is the color. That's gonna sound weird. I wanted something like more, I don't know, liney, I guess. And then I found this and I was like, you know what, that's it. And only one other person had done it with nutiden, so I was a little bit worried, but I think it's working out well. And I'm really, really pleased with how the finished object is turning out, and I cannot wait to get the body done. So hopefully that'll be done for next time. I actually have more acquisitions than I had intended. So the first acquisition is I had found some yarn on Marketplace again. Someone is selling a bunch of cones of yarn for 20 bucks, and I went and picked it up. And I really only picked it up for one of the cones, but it came with all the cones, so I'll just show them all. So the first two cones are this. It is an acrylic or an acrylic blend yarn of this like multicolored orange, black, white. I think it's really cool looking. I just don't, like, I have enough yarn in my stash now that I don't really have a lot of use for acrylic. I don't love using it. And so if anyone's interested in this yarn, I might end up reselling it or just donating it. Most of this yarn is acrylic, unfortunately, and I didn't go for that. So anyways, those are them. And then in the same vein, I have a black, beige, and white version. I actually really like the coloring of this one. Decent amount of yarn on each of these cones. I just don't know what I'd use it for. I just really like natural fibers, so I'll hold on to them for now. Then we have this blue acrylic that looks like this. Again, a beautiful color. It's wrapped around in like 4 strands, so I think it's definitely more suited to machine knitting. But that one has a really nice softness to it. And then 2 yarns that are more like crochet yarns, I would think, and they're both acrylic as well. So those are all acrylic or acrylic blends. I've done the burn test and they're definitely melting instead of burning, so I know that they're artificial fibers, which is fine. I like, if you use acrylic, I have nothing against that at all. I now am really sensitive to it on my skin. And I look for natural fibers not only in the things that I knit, but also what I wear. I almost only wear like cotton and linen when I'm buying things, and then when I'm making it for myself, it's wools, alpacas, and mohair. And I just find that since I've started knitting, I'm so much more sensitive and cognizant to the way that material feels on my body. And the only place that I can tolerate like artificial fibers, it's really on my bottom, because I wear a lot of leggings and like they're polyester spandex blends, and I find that those don't bother me as much on my bottom half, but on my top half, I don't know what it is. I find that my arms and my chest are now really sensitive, and acrylic just like, I feel squeaky. I don't know, but this is why I went and bought it, and this is, I think, worth the $20 to me. So this is from Camden Yarns. It is 100% wool, and it is their 2-ply, and I don't know if the yarn is called pine or if it's in the color pine, but it is so beautiful. Look at that color. It's just like the nicest orange, and oh my gosh, there's so much of it. So I think I'll eventually hold this with the second strand and make just a beautiful, like, I love this color. The most beautiful color of this. So I went for this yarn, I picked it up, whatever. I then brought it home and I was looking at the cones and I was looking on the inside, to try and see if there was any more information, and this cone had a spider web in it. I almost died. I lost it. So this is not something I've encountered while thrifting before. There's no spider in it, but it was real gross. I vacuumed it out. I think I'm gonna skein this up and wash it. I think it was probably sitting in someone's basement. It doesn't smell, but there was a spider in it at some point, and that really freaks me out. Don't use this against me, please. Please, you will be blocked. I am arachnophobic, if you couldn't tell by my rant earlier today. It's irrational, and it really controls a lot of my life in a really negative way. And I have made some steps to try and help how much of a fear it is for me, but it's a lot for me, and I don't like that I have this fear, but it's a genuine fear of mine. And yeah, so it's tainted the yarn a little bit for me. I am going to, I think, skein it up and wash it, and then I'll feel a little bit better, and then I can throw out the cone and never look at it again. So that's my plan for this yarn, and then for the rest of them, they did not have spider webs in them, thank God. I did vacuum them all out anyways, just in case. And I am going to, what is that? Oh, piece of, now I'm paranoid. There's a piece of paper on that one. I am going to, yeah, maybe I might even donate them. I don't know if I want to keep them in my stash. They're fine. I just don't think I'll use them, and I don't really want to be keeping things that I don't think I'll use. So I would rather give them to a nice home. So if you want them and are willing to pay for shipping, message me on Instagram, and I would be happy to send them your way if you're willing to do that. But yeah. Now for the nicer acquisitions, I guess. My sister very lovingly gave me a gift card to my local knitting shop, Shall We Knit. It's more of a boutique shop. It has weird hours. So I ordered things on Christmas. I got the gift card on Christmas. I ordered it on Christmas, but she didn't open up again until January 3rd or 4th. So I was only able to go get my order this past week. So I went in to go pick it up. And what I had ordered with her gift card is one of my favorite fibers. It is Blue Sky Fibers wool stock, and I got it in this stunning dark green. I'm so in love. So I have a sweater's quantity already of the dark gray wool stock, but I think I'm actually going to cast this on first. This is the color Wild Thyme, and I love their yarn. It is so soft. It comes in these really chunky skeins that are like 300 and something yards. Are you gonna say 370 yards, and they're 150 gram skeins? And yeah, I just think I love this yarn. This is what this is knit in, and ever since I've been like, I need it in all the colors. I want to knit everything with it. So I really want to make like a basic sweater with this, and the reason I'm thinking of casting this on first is because I actually think that this and this will fulfill the same purpose in my life. I just need more dark basic sweaters. I find myself wanting to reach for them a lot and not having them in my wardrobe, and so I'm not completely sold on what pattern I'm going to make with this yet, but I know that it's going to be like a very basic, I think a drop shoulder shape. So I think that this will be perfect, and I know that this and this are basically going to fulfill the same purpose in my wardrobe of just being that basic. And because almost all of the pants I wear are black, blue, or green, this will go with all of them except for the green, and that's basically the same as this, and then I can stare at a green while I'm knitting. So I think I'm gonna pass this on first. And then while I was in the shop, I had no intentions of getting this, but I got suckered in. There was a sale. So I'm gonna say this wrong. The owner of the shop was there, and she said it in a way that I hadn't heard it said before, but I'm sure is right. Shibui? I don't think that's how you say it. So they are a family-run yarn business, and they're going out of business. They are retiring is what I heard, and they are just going out of the business. And so all of their yarns everywhere that I've seen are 30% off. So if you have a local yarn store that stocks these people, you should be able to get it for 30% off. When I posted this on Instagram, people were like, where's the sale? Everywhere. You can get this everywhere that stocks this yarn. The stock is dwindling almost everywhere. So if you are interested in trying out this brand, I would recommend it. They seem to specialize. I don't know a lot about them. I hadn't really encountered them before the sale. But they seem to specialize in fingering and lace weight wools and silks, and tend to have a lot more luxury fibers. But I will say that the colors are absolutely stunning. So I picked up what I'm hoping will be a sweater's quantity of yarn. So this is their Lunar base. Look at that color. It is so shiny. Their Lunar base is 60% extra fine merino and 40% mulberry silk. Oh my gosh. This color is pollen, and this is a lace weight. It's 401 yards per 50 grams. So it's pretty thin. And so soft. And then I am going to pair that with this Silk Cloud, which is also just so, don't look at my face, so stunning. And like them together, are you kidding right now? Look at that shine. Look at that shine. And this is 60% kid mohair and 40% silk, and this is the softest mohair I've ever felt in my life. This combination is going to be the bougiest sweater I've ever owned. So I have 2 skeins of each. My concern is that I don't have enough for a sweater. So when I bought this, I was thinking maybe I can get a lento out of this. I know that a lento cal is happening. And I've always wanted to try the lento, and people always say you need, like, for my size, I've heard that you need 2 skeins of fingering and 2 skeins of mohair. And while this is a lace, I've held it up to my other fingering skeins, and it doesn't seem that far off. And I was like, you know what? I could be able to make this work. But I don't know. So that is an option. I was also thinking, I know I've gotten away with 2 skeins of mohair and 2 skeins of fingering for my tulip guernsey, which is one of my favorite sweaters I've ever made, and I wear it all the time. So that's another option. I just don't know that I love this color for a tulip guernsey. And the next one I had planned to make was a navy, and I'm more excited about that. Do I need 3 tulip guernseys in my life? I don't know. Then I was talking to the owner of the yarn store, and she had recommended a love note. And I've never made a love note, but I've heard good things. And it's similar to ranunculus, which is also, I guess, an option, in that you can do it at pretty much any like yarn weight and it will look fine. So that's another option. And then I was looking more at like, well, maybe I can do something like more of like a t-shirt, like a winter t-shirt. And I don't know if I'm sold on that either. So if you have a good idea for what to use this yarn for, please leave it in the comments below. I was looking through the Ravelry of what other people have made with this yarn, and it seems like other people had the good sense to buy more than me. So I'm tempted to go buy another skein of at least the mohair, because I have less of the mohair than I do the wool, but maybe one more of each. But it was already expensive enough. I spent, I think, about $90 on just these 4 skeins of yarn. And that was money I didn't intend to spend anyways. And that seems like more than enough for a garment. And I don't know how, it's not a garment that I had intended to make. It's not a garment I need. It's very much a luxury for me, and spending more money on it just seems a little daft. So I really would love to make something out of what I have, and I think I can. I just think I'm gonna have to put a lot more thought into it. So if you have any recommendations, I am all ears. I might try and cast on the lento, and if it ends up being a t-shirt, it ends up being a t-shirt, and then I just wear cardigans over top of it. I actually think that this would actually look lovely. Look at that. That looks lovely together. So I mean, that's a possibility as well. And then I just have a really luxe t-shirt that I wear in the winter. But yeah, I am all ears if you have thoughts of how to use this well. And then I should, based on, so this is 401 yards and this is only 330 yards. So I should have more of the merino than I do of the mohair. So I'm working with like 660 yards, which I realize is not a lot, especially for a size, like I'm a street size large. But then I think what I'm going to do with the extra of this, if I don't buy another thing of mohair, if it goes on sale more, I'll buy more of it, I will. But if it's 30% off, it's expensive. Still, it was a very luxury fiber. I think that I will make a hat, like the most luxurious yellow hat you've ever seen in your life, or like a cowl, because I just want this, I want this on my body. So anyways, I wanted to cast this on immediately now because it is such a luxe fiber and it seems like a waste sitting back there. But I want to cast on like everything I have. So I don't even know what I'm going to cast on next. I still have not finished my husband's Christmas knit. So that is definitely on my priority list. I have my sweater number 23 to finish, and everything that I've showed you today I need to finish. So I hopefully will not be casting on anything new by the time next episode comes around. But if I do, just know I tried. I would really like to get the things that are on my needles off my needles. And I think that'll be my priority for the next 2 weeks. Sorry to be boring. I think the next episode will be a lot of things that you've already seen, as was this episode, to be fair. But I think that it will help my brain to get a little bit more off of it. And then have the creative freedom to like be able to try something new. But anyways, let me know what you're knitting on. If you had a Christmas or a New Year's cast on, please let me know. Thank you so much for joining me. This was way longer than I expected it to be. I am going to go eat some lunch and then get on to editing this podcast. And yeah, now my brain is going blank. I've been talking for far too long. So have a wonderful week ahead of you, and I will see you next time. Subscribe if you want to subscribe. Goodbye.